They said the desert was lifeless, but that night, it burned with more than just fire. Roman wasn't the kind of man who expected anything from the universe until it dropped a starship at his feet. In the silence of twilight, he found her, an alien woman, trembling, shivering, and wrapped in nothing but shock and stardust. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He just handed her a towel. But what she did next didn't make sense, not in any earthly way. She didn't just thank him, she knelt. She whispered something foreign. Her eyes shimmered with an emotion no human had ever seen. She believed she belonged to him now. Roman wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't ready for what that towel would mean to her people, or for the warship that would follow her trail, or for the feelings that would bury themselves in his chest like a second heartbeat. This is not just a story about survival. It's about a gesture that defied galaxies. It's about how a man with nothing became everything to the woman who wasn't even from his world. The desert had a way of silencing everything. No horns, no voices, just wind, rock, and time. Roman liked it that way. He'd left behind the noise of the cities, the people, the wars. Out here, things made sense. You built your fire, you boiled your water, and you listened to the stars whisper. But on that particular evening, something shattered the silence. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It was light, blazing, violent light, tearing through the sky like a sword from the gods. Roman stood outside his shelter, shirtless, a pot of stew boiling behind him, and watched as a streak of fire arced across the horizon and crashed behind the hills. He grabbed his gear and moved. Years of surviving had taught him that strange. Could mean dangerous, but it could also mean important. And there she was. Amid smoke and twisted metal, a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. A woman, humanoid in shape, but her features were too symmetrical, too striking. Silver pale skin kissed by dust, hair like moonlight, eyes that seemed to carry centuries of exile. She was breathing, but barely. Her body trembled, and her strange clothing was half torn, clinging by fibers that pulsed with dying bioluminescence. Roman didn't speak. He simply pulled the emergency towel from his backpack and held it out. That was all. But she didn't take it like someone cold. She took it like it was sacred. Her hands trembled as she accepted it, wrapping it around her with reverence. Then, she knelt, on both knees, lowered her forehead to the dust, whispered words in a tongue that sounded like glass chiming underwater. Roman blinked. Hey. No need for all that. You're safe now. But she didn't stop. She reached for his hand, pressed it to her own chest, just below the collarbone. He felt a pulse. No, not a heartbeat. A hum. A warmth. Something alive. Later, he'd learn what that meant. To her people, a towel offered during vulnerability wasn't just kindness, it was claim. It was protection. It was a bond, a vow. He'd just become her keeper. Roman didn't want that. He hadn't signed up for that. But as the sun dipped and the fire crackled beside them, he caught her eyes again, glassy, terrified, and yet full of something soft. Something like hope. And in that moment, he didn't see a creature from another galaxy. He saw someone alone. He saw himself. So he let her stay. Let her sit by the flames. Let her eat from his bowl. Let her speak her strange words into the night while her body warmed beside his. She didn't ask for shelter again. She didn't have to, because what started as survival was now becoming something neither of them understood. Not yet. The sun dipped low, dragging its golden fingers across the canyon walls as Roman gathered wood. The air was dry, silent, broken only by the occasional hiss of the wind over stone. His days were built on repetition. Wake, hunt, Fix, survive. Simplicity. Kept the ghosts quiet. But that evening cracked his world open. A rumble shook the soil beneath his boots, low and unnatural. He turned just in time to witness a rift tear through the heavens, a gleaming craft spiraling, vomiting smoke, trailing sparks like a dying comet. It slammed into the ridge not a mile from his camp, splitting boulders and coughing fire. Roman didn't hesitate. Instinct overruled logic. He grabbed his utility belt, slung a pack over his shoulder, and ran toward the wreckage. Something in his chest pulsed. Not fear, not even curiosity. Something older. Something pulling. When he reached the crater, time warped. The heat licked at his skin, and twisted metal groaned as it cooled. The ship, or what remained, was shaped like a crescent, fractured down its middle. But it wasn't the tech that froze him. It was her. A figure lay sprawled across a smooth chunk of hull, slumped, exposed, glowing faintly beneath layers of torn synthetic fabric that looked half-organic. Her skin, pale like marble but freckled, with burn marks. Her hair spilled across her shoulder like silver silk, soaked in sweat and ash. She was conscious, but barely. Her breaths were shallow, her limbs limp, and she was beautiful. Not in the way Roman had known beauty. No makeup, no gloss, no effort. She was raw, ethereal, a piece of the cosmos that had crash-landed into his loneliness. He approached cautiously. "Hey," he said, voice low, soothing. "Don't move. I'm not here to hurt you." Her eyes flicked open, ice blue, almost, luminescent, and locked on him. Not with fear, not with confusion, with recognition. Roman blinked. That shouldn't be possible. She couldn't know him. She tried to sit up, then winced, her hand clutching her side where a purple-blue liquid oozed from beneath the ripped fabric. Her breathing quickened. Her gaze fell to her own state of undress, and her body tensed with shame. Roman acted. He pulled a towel from his pack, one of the few soft things he still carried from his old life, and held it out to her, stepping forward carefully. "Here, it's clean, warm. You need this more than I do." She stared at the fabric like it was something holy. With trembling fingers, she reached out, and then stopped. Her eyes never left his. Slowly, deliberately, she touched the edge of the towel, then wrapped it around her body. Her shoulders dropped, not just in relief, but in surrender. Then she did something Roman couldn't explain. She knelt before him. On the dirt, hands clasped, head bowed, and softly she whispered, "The rite is sealed." Roman's brows drew together. What rite? But she didn't answer. She placed one hand over her heart, and the other over his. He felt something shift, not physically, something deeper. An invisible thread wound between them, humming with strange energy. He didn't know it yet, but that single gesture had bound them in a way no earthling tradition could describe. He wasn't just her rescuer, he had become her chosen. The fire crackled between them, casting flickering shadows across their faces as twilight surrendered to night. Roman sat across from her now, this strange woman named Beryssa, her name revealed only after several silent exchanges and soft gestures. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of English words, but her presence carried weight, something ancient yet gentle. She was wrapped in the towel, her posture composed but not relaxed, like royalty out of place. Roman noticed how her fingers clutched the fabric with purpose, not simply for modesty, but as if it were armor. Something sacred. He broke the silence. "So, what was that back there? The bowing, the right?" Beryssa didn't meet his gaze. Immediately. Her eyes stayed on the flames, flickering like memories across her pupils. She took a breath. Gesture. Matters. To you, cloth, warmth, help. Roman nodded slowly. Yeah. Just trying to keep you from freezing. But she turned to him then, eyes sharp and glowing. Not just warmth. In my world, when male gives fabric during moment of vulnerability, it is claiming. Roman blinked. Claiming? Like ownership? His tone sharpened with unease. She shook her head quickly. Not owning. Binding. Sacred oath. Life protection. Until breath ends. His heart skipped. You mean, like marriage? She tilted her head. Closer to soul. Bond, body, mind, fate, interlinked. Cannot be undone unless both break vow. Roman sat back, stunned. I just gave you a towel. And I accepted, she said solemnly, knowing what it means. The air thickened. The wind stilled. The weight of her words settled on his chest like stone. He hadn't asked for any of this. He didn't understand her customs, didn't want to mislead her. But when he looked into her eyes, steady, open, unafraid, he didn't see delusion. He saw devotion and something else. Gratitude. Reverence. So what happens now? He asked softly. Beryssa hesitated, as if choosing her, words with care. Now. I stay close. I defend. I listen. I learn. I become what you need. That is bond. Roman exhaled, brushing a hand through his hair. Look, I wasn't trying to... I'm just a guy who lives out here because I'm tired of people. I didn't plan to start some alien marriage pact. Her face softened. Intent. Not required. Act was the vow. He gave a dry chuckle. You're serious. She nodded once. I owe you everything. The fire cracked again, and silence took over. Roman reached for a canteen, handed it to her. She drank slowly, savoring each drop like it was the first water she'd ever tasted. Watching her, he noticed how alien and human blurred together in her gestures. The way she tilted her head, the reverence in her silence, the trust she gave so quickly. It wasn't weakness. It was loyalty. He had saved her without asking for anything. But in return, she was offering him a devotion deeper than anything he'd ever known. Not transactional, not hesitant. Pure. He wrapped a blanket around himself, more to shield his thoughts than his skin. I don't know what you're running from, Beryssa, he said. But you're safe here. For now. Her lips parted and she whispered, almost brokenly, Not safe. Never safe. They come. Roman stiffened. Who comes? Beryssa turned toward the dark sky, now full of stars. Her voice was barely audible. Those who want me back, because I did not agree to be sold. And just like that, Roman realized, this wasn't just an accidental crash. This was an escape, and by handing her that towel, he hadn't just offered kindness. He had stepped between her and a war he couldn't even see yet. The stars blinked above, silent witnesses to what was unfolding below. Roman poked at the fire absently, eyes stealing glances at the woman across from him, this alien stranger who now sat wrapped in a towel he'd never thought twice about, as if it were woven from fate itself. Beryssa hadn't moved much since revealing her truth. But her mind wasn't still. He could see it in the tension of her jaw, in how her fingers traced invisible patterns into the sand. She was weighing something, clutching onto invisible threads of her past and whatever future she believed she had now tied to him. Roman finally broke the silence again. You said you were being sold? She looked up, voice flat, like someone too exhausted to lie. My body. My gift. It was decided for me. Royal blood. Barren line. I was made, bred, to fix it. His breath caught. Your royalty? Second tier, she said with a bitter smile. Good enough for marriage, Not good enough for choice. She leaned closer to the fire now, the heat reflecting in her eyes like galaxies. They told me who I'd breed with, how many children, how my womb would redeem our dying stars. Roman's stomach turned. And you ran? She nodded. I didn't want to be a vessel. I wanted to be. Her gaze met his, steady now. And when I fell, when I thought I'd die, you handed me warmth. You didn't touch me, didn't strip me, didn't claim me with hands. You gave me respect. And in our culture, that makes you sacred. He rubbed his temples, torn between awe and anxiety. I didn't do anything special. You didn't. Take, she said. That is special. Roman stood up, walking a few paces from the fire. He felt her eyes follow him in silence. Her words echoed inside him like a secret that knew too much. You think I'm sacred, he said. But I'm just a man trying to keep his own demons quiet. She stood too, barefoot on the rock, not flinching at the cold. The towel shifted against her skin but didn't fall. Demons stay, she said. But now they face me too, her. Voice was so calm, so determined, it rattled something inside him. Roman turned around to face her. You don't know what I've done, what I've run from. I don't care who you were, she whispered, stepping closer. I only see who you are now. And there, under a sky so wide it swallowed mountains, Beryssa lifted her hand and touched his chest. Gently, not claiming, not commanding, just being. Roman felt the rhythm of her energy, like a pulse echoing in tune with his own heartbeat. The air between them shimmered, not with magic, but with recognition. Then something high above screamed through the silence. Both of them froze. In the sky, distant but deliberate, a glowing dot zipped across the stars and came to a halt. Not falling, not shooting. Scanning. Beryssa's body tensed instantly. They found me. Roman clenched his fists. Are they armed? They don't need weapons. They scan minds, find truth, make anyone kneel. Roman glanced at the shipwreck, behind them, then at her. Then we can't stay here. Beryssa hesitated. If we run, you will be hunted. Forever. Roman smiled grimly. Then I'll make sure the chase is worth their while. For the first time, she looked almost human, afraid, hopeful, and torn all at once. You would risk your kind for mine? He nodded. You weren't the first person to crash into my life. But you might be the first I chose not to let go. As the fire burned lower, Roman started packing supplies. Beryssa knelt and pressed her hand to the ground, whispering something to the soil, like she was saying goodbye. Because she was. The moment she accepted that towel, she wasn't just running anymore. She had someone worth running with. The night didn't feel like night anymore. It felt hunted. Roman slung a pack over his shoulder, scanning the horizon for movement. Beryssa stood near the scorched remnants of her ship, head bowed slightly, fingers gently brushing the outer hull, as if part of her spirit was fused to it, now being left behind. They moved before dawn. No headlights, no fire, only moonlight and footsteps muffled in sand. Where are we going? She asked, voice low. There's a canyon system about 30 miles south, Roman said, his pace brisk. Old mining tunnels, abandoned, deep enough to jam most scanners. I used to hide there when the world felt too loud. She nodded. Then it is perfect. The world is too loud now. They trekked through arid valleys, scaled jagged ridges, and slipped through ghost towns swallowed by time. The sky above occasionally shimmered with unfamiliar lights, silent orbs that floated like vultures, watching, calculating. Drones. Not from Earth. Beryssa never once asked to stop. She walked beside him, barefoot on stone, towel replaced by Roman's spare jacket, too large for her frame but wrapped like sacred armor. He had offered her his only weapon, a hunting knife, but she declined. "I have my own ways," she whispered. He didn't ask what that meant, but by the second day he saw it. They were crossing a dry riverbed when a drone swooped low. It hovered just above their heads, its scanner beginning to glow with invasive light. Roman reached for the knife. Beryssa raised her hand first. The air around her twitched, then folded inward. With a sound like breaking glass, the drone fell, mid-flight and shattered on a rock, its core fizzling into smoke. Roman stared. "You didn't touch it." "I touched what it fears." She walked ahead. From that moment, the chase changed. They weren't just fleeing. They were challenging. Every time a drone came close, it was repelled, not just by power, but by will. And yet, Beryssa grew weaker each time. "You're burning yourself out," Roman warned one evening as they took shelter inside a cave. "It costs energy," she admitted. "But if I don't protect you, the bond breaks," he scoffed. That bond again, but deep down he wasn't scoffing at all. That night, under the rocks and stars, they finally had peace. Roman cooked a small meal and they shared it wordlessly. Afterward, she lay beside him, closer than before, her breath syncing with his. There was no awkwardness, no boundaries, just presence. Roman looked over at her. "Do you miss your world?" "I miss the version of me who believed it was home," she replied softly. "Now, I feel more seen in your silence than I ever did in their applause." His throat tightened. "I never asked for this." "But you never rejected it." She turned, to face him then inches away. Her hand rested on his cheek, fingers feather-light. "Roman," she whispered, "if I die tomorrow, they will remember me as a traitor. But tonight, I remember what it feels like to be wanted, not used." Roman reached for her hand, held it tight. "If they come for you again, they'll have to go through me. You are one man. And you're not just any woman." They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The touch, the trust, the shared silence, it said everything. But as dawn approached, a distant thunder rolled across the earth. Not natural. Not of this world. A ship was coming. Not a drone. A war carrier. Beryssa's face went pale. "That's my family's crest. They've come to retrieve me by force." Roman gritted his teeth. "Then we don't run anymore." The war carrier descended like a black sun, blotting out the rising dawn. Its hull bore the sigil of Beryssa's bloodline, an emblem carved in gleaming obsidian, 3 rings intersecting a singular blade. It hummed low, vibrating the very bones of the earth. Roman stood outside the cave, rifle slung across his shoulder, heart pounding like tribal drums. He wasn't a soldier, not anymore. But today wasn't about war, it was about her. Beryssa stepped beside him, the wind pulling her silver, hair around her face like a halo of light. She wore the oversized jacket still, torn at the sleeve, dirt clinging to its fabric. And yet, there was something regal in her stance, like a queen disguised in ruin. "They'll offer you mercy," she said softly. "If you give me up willingly." He glanced sideways. "And if I don't?" "They'll erase you." Roman gave a half smile. "Then let's make it memorable." The air around them shimmered. A spotlight from the ship bathed them in white. And then a voice echoed, digitally, warped but unmistakably royal, "Princess Beryssa. Return now. Your blood binds you to the order. Your defiance is void." She stepped forward. "And his gesture binds me to a vow. I belong to him now. By will, not force." "That is not recognized by council law." Roman laughed dryly. "Good thing I don't recognize your council." A beam of light shot from the ship, a warning pulse that scorched the sand near his boots. Roman didn't flinch. Beryssa did something then, something she hadn't done since her crash. She dropped to her knees again, but this time, She didn't bow to him. She bowed with him. Side by side, they knelt, holding hands, eyes closed, pulse united. Her voice rose in her native tongue, chanting an ancient rite that rang like a storm between dimensions. The ship faltered. For a moment, the carrier's lights flickered. Then, a second voice responded from inside the vessel. Female. Angry. Not. Mechanical. Stop the engines. Stand down. She invoked the right of consent. It cannot be broken, not even by blood. Beryssa's eyes opened, glassy, tearful, alive. "That's my sister," she whispered. The ship slowly lifted, turning its underside toward the clouds. The roar softened. Then silence. No missiles. No soldiers. No capture. Only wind. Only them. Roman let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Beryssa turned to him, blinking through disbelief. "You don't understand. That should have ended with fire." He reached over, brushing a strand of her hair away from her face. "Then maybe fire's not what they saw." She leaned into his touch. "They saw something impossible." "They saw the truth," he replied. Later that night, under a quiet sky, Roman set 2 cups of water between them. "Do you still believe in that bond of yours?" he asked. Beryssa smiled, her eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "I don't have to believe anymore. You proved it." They sat in silence again, not as fugitive and rescuer, but as 2 lives forever altered by a single act of kindness, one towel, one gesture, one vow stronger than an empire.